He thought punching a black man in the station lobby for wearing a disrespectful shirt would be just another Tuesday. It was a casual display of power, a brutal message he'd sent 100 times before. But what Officer Dean Miller didn't know was that the man in the blue silk shirt wasn't a suspect. He was the retribution, the inevitable. Captain Elias St. Jude, head of internal affairs, conducting an unscheduled, deep-cover inspection that was about to dismantle Miller's entire world. The 23rd Precinct lobby, a purgatory of flickering fluorescent lights and cracked linoleum floors reeked of stale coffee and desperation. This gray, miserable environment was Miller's domain, and a vibrant, audacious, deep blue silk shirt was a flag of defiance he couldn't tolerate. It was a splash of life in his dead world of authority. Miller swaggered over his hand, resting on his service weapon. A practiced gesture of intimidation. "You got a problem, friend." The man didn't flinch, he simply raised his head, his dark eyes meeting Miller's with an unnerving, bottomless calm. There was no fear, only profound watchfulness. "I'm talking to you, you deaf. Or is that shirt so loud you can't hear over it?" The target's silence was a canvas, onto which Miller painted his narrative of disrespect. "Stand up," Miller commanded. The man's quiet refusal was an insult Miller couldn't tolerate. He reached out, grabbing a handful of the smooth, expensive silk, twisting the fabric. "Who do you think you're walking in here, looking like some kind of pimp?" When the man slowly rose, his height forced Miller to look up, intensifying the officer's internal crisis of slipping authority. The man's open hands were a posture of non-aggression that somehow felt more menacing than a fist. Miller spat, shoving the man back. The man caught his balance, his expression unchanging. That was the final straw for Miller. The world was simple order and chaos. This man was chaos, he was disrespect. "You're gonna learn to show some respect," Miller growled and threw a punch, with all the force of his accumulated frustration and prejudice. The sickening crack of knuckles hitting bone echoed like a gunshot through the lobby. A trickle of crimson ran from the corner of the man's mouth. He didn't fall. He just stood there absorbing the blow. When his eyes reopened, the watchfulness was gone. It had been replaced by the cold, final look of a judge who had heard the last piece of evidence needed to pronounce sentence. Miller, breathing heavily, had no idea he had just written his own termination papers and triggered the collapse of his entire world. The precinct's invisible machinery for damage control immediately lurched into motion. Lieutenant Garrick, his face set in a state of weary cynicism, materialized before the blood had even been wiped from the victim's lip. He took in the scene, the aggressive Miller, the pale Finn, and the unerringly still black man. The problem wasn't the assault, it was the potential paperwork and the threat to the blue wall. Garrick orchestrated the lie inside his cluttered office, dictating the false report. A John Doe displaying erratic behavior became belligerent during routine questioning. He sustained a minor facial injury. Miller nodded, the lies settling comfortably around him. Garrick then secured the system's compliance. Sergeant Vega would suddenly recall organizing files. The lobby camera's brand new footage would be inexplicably corrupted, and Officer Finn would file a report confirming Garrick's dictation. The man in the blue shirt sat alone in the interrogation room, listening to every hurried whisper, every hushed phone call. He heard Garrick assuring someone that the situation was handled, and that the camera footage was on the fritz again. The system was protecting itself, sealing its internal crimes brick by quiet brick. He let them build their fortress, knowing he held the key to its utter demolition. An hour later, Garrick returned, ready to deliver a stern warning and dismiss the anonymous problem. "All right, you're free to go," Garrick said, not making eye contact. "I'd advise you to think about your attitude next time you're in a police station." The man rose, his movements fluid and deliberate. "No, Lieutenant," he said, his voice calm and resonant. "Heard for the first time, I'm not going anywhere. But you're gonna get Captain Rhodes, and you're gonna get Officer Miller and Officer Finn. We're going to have a meeting in the captain's office now." He then reached into his pocket and flipped open a wallet, revealing a gold shield and an ID card. Garrick's eyes widened, the blood draining from his face as he read the name and title. Captain Elias St. Jude, head of internal affairs. The reality hit Garrick like a physical blow. They had assaulted the very wolf they thought they were driving from, the henhouse.st. Jude immediately took command. He knew he wasn't just fighting one rogue cop. He was fighting an entrenched culture. He needed an ally who knew the precinct's inner workings, but hadn't been poisoned by them. He found Officer Maya Chun in the locker room. She was young and her eyes were filled with exhaustion and anxiety. I saw your face in the lobby. He told her the question isn't what you saw. Officer Chun, the question is how did it make you feel? Her tears and her confession. It made me sick, this place. It grinds you down, it feels more like a tomb. Where his confirmation, he wasn't asking her to be a spy. He was asking her to be a good cop. The alliance was forged. The investigation began as an archaeological dig into Officer Dean Miller's career, chilling knowing the official files were a joke. Access the less public server containing the informal complaints. The digital whispers of misconduct that have been deliberately silenced. They unearthed dozens of them, all linked to Miller, all closed by Garrick. This wasn't just about covering up a single assault. It was a systematic system. They found files showing patterns of racial profiling, escalating to violence. Trevor Banks pulled over for simply driving a nice car while black, and a teenager hospitalized with a concussion. Crucially, they found evidence of retaliation. David Sterling, who filed a complaint against Miller, was arrested on a trumped-up drug charge a week later and was currently awaiting trial. On Rikers, the 23rd Precinct was not just covering up crimes. They were using the power of the badge to systematically destroy the lives of anyone who dared to speak out against them. The system pushed back in the form of Frank Donovan, the powerful local delegate for the police union. Donovan, a master of intimidation and bureaucratic warfare, requested a meeting. My client responded to a perceived threat from a non-compliant individual. Donovan boomed, his smile wide but his eyes cold. He framed St. Jude's undercover operation as a political attack, threatening to unleash a media strategy, ready to go, that paints you as an overzealous IIA hack. He was defending the blue wall itself, ready to use union funds and legal loopholes to choke the investigation to death. Donovan's threats materialized immediately. Procedural red tape clogged their access and file requests were lost. The one piece of evidence that could cut through the noise, Miller's body camera footage, remained the holy grail. The official story was irretrievable corruption. Chun, however, knew about the digital ghost, a temporary copy stored on a central server that would be overwritten in less than 48 hours. Working with a nervous tech, they launched a covert raid at exactly midnight. Chun was navigating through firewalls and security protocols. The download was agonizingly slow. 3 minutes passed, then an alert. Unauthorized access detected. System lockdown in 60 seconds. Chun, fueled by adrenaline, pushed the download at 99%. With only 10 seconds remaining on the countdown, the download completed. She violently yanked the Ethernet cable, severing the connection just as the countdown hit 0. They had secured the undeniable, unerasable evidence. The disciplinary hearing was a kangaroo court. Miller, chastened and humble, sat next to Donovan, who orchestrated the proceedings. Like a master puppeteer, Donovan chipped away at St. Jude's credibility, recasting the victim as the aggressor. Officer Finn and Sergeant Vega delivered their coached testimonies. Donovan saved his final act for Miller, who delivered a tearful, utterly false display of contrition. I misread the situation. I deeply regret the outcome. But I was just trying to do my job. The panel, their allegiance clear, were ready to deliver a slap on the wrist. The petitioner has presented no credible, corroborated evidence of wrongdoing. Donovan concluded triumphantly. I ask that you dismiss this complaint and restore Officer Miller's good name. It was at this precise moment of smug victory that St. Jude chose to strike. As the chairman cleared his throat, St. Jude spoke. The petitioner has one final piece of evidence: to submit Officer Miller's body camera footage. A stunned silence fell. Donovan shouted objection. This is a fabrication, but the trap had snapped shut. The panel, their curiosity piqued and their authority challenged, had no choice. The lights dimmed. The blurry first-person footage appeared on the wall. The room watched the scene in raw, unfiltered clarity. They saw St. Jude sitting silently. They saw Miller's escalating aggression, and then the audio that sealed his fate. Just before the punch, Miller leaned in, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper, uttering a racial slur he hadn't mentioned in his tearful apology. The word was cut off by the sickening crack of the punch. The raw, unadulterated racism and brutality stripped away every lie. Every excuse. Miller collapsed, his face a mask of ruin. Donovan stood frozen, his entire defense annihilated in 45 seconds of undeniable truth. The chairman hammered his gavel with a final crack. The panel's recommendation to the commissioner will be for immediate termination of Officer Dean Miller. Donovan, for the first time in his career, was speechless, grabbing his briefcase and walking out. Abandoning his client, the fallout was an earthquake. The body camera footage was leaked, exploding into a citywide scandal. Lieutenant Garrick was fired and faced criminal charges for obstruction. Officer Finn was also terminated for filing a false report. Captain Rhodes was forced into a dishonorable retirement. The kingdom it built had fallen. St. Jude used the political capital to force through real systemic change. He implemented the St. Jude Protocols, a sweeping set of reforms mandating that all body camera footage for any use of force incident be automatically uploaded to a secure, independent server controlled by IA, bypassing the local precinct entirely. This dismantled the Blue Wall's most effective tool of denial. Maya Chun was promoted to detective and transferred to internal affairs, becoming a key member of St. Jude's team and a beacon for others. The punch, a moment of brutal injustice, became the catalyst for a profound revolution in accountability, planting a seed of trust in the scorched earth of the department's soul.